Good evening. It is the 6th of August 2021 and this is the primetime news on TV1. For the Newsfirst team, I am Azra Hassan. Before we head into our stories in detail, let's take a look at your headlines for tonight.
Administer the first dose of vaccines at centres providing the second dose of the jab, a directive from the President. Delta variant cases in Colombo surge. Home-based management of COVID-19 cases to commence from Monday. The country is on the verge of a calamity, a statement from the opposition leader. Convener of the Inter-University Students Federation and chairman of the Sri Jayawardhanapura University Students Federation remanded.
On to your top story now. At the meeting of the COVID-19 Prevention Committee chaired by the President, it was decided that the first dose of the COVID-19 vaccines will be provided to anyone above the age of 30 at all vaccination centres administering the second doses of the vaccines.
The COVID-19 Prevention Committee met at the Presidential Secretariat this morning. At the meeting, intelligence units had pointed out that during the past month, about 120 protests have been staged across the country and a minimum of 1,500 people had participated in each of these protests. The President's media division stated that the intelligence units were of the opinion that such large gatherings of the public where COVID-19 guidelines were not followed was one of the reasons for the rapid spread of the COVID-19 pandemic across the country. An increase was seen in the number of patients being admitted daily to hospitals in Colombo and other major cities in the island. At the meeting today, the President had stressed that symptomatic patients should first be directed to intermediary care centres and be hospitalised after assessing their progress.
Hospital management
must be conducted intricately. When they are admitted, patients are screened at one ward. That would only lead to the ward filling up. There are 1,100 beds in Sidua. If we can screen the patients who are to be admitted at the Ragama Hospital in Sidua first, there would be no complication. Every patient can be allocated beds and checked. Those are to be sent for home management can be sent for that purpose. And those who need to be hospitalized can be transported to the hospital.
Home management යවන්න පුළුවන්. ඊට පස්සේ hospitalize කරන අය hospitalize කරන්න පුළුවන්.
The President has also called for the direct involvement of ministers, state ministers and healthcare officials to formulate a method to ease the burden on patients at hospital levels. He has stressed it is the responsibility of medical professionals to ensure best practices to prevent the spread of the virus is disseminated to the masses through the media constantly. Further, it was revealed at today's meeting that the state has placed orders for sufficient vaccines which would allow for all those above the age of 18 to be inoculated before the start of September.
Plans have been drawn to place orders for a total quantity of 31.2 million vaccines. When the Sinopharm vaccine arrive in the first 2 weeks, even the second dose can be administered to all those above the age of 18. When that is done, we can concentrate on administering the booster dose because 18 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine have been ordered, which will arrive in December. We can inoculate 70% of the 21 million people with those 18 million doses. We need to decide what measures we are going to take over the issue of people failing to wear masks. That is the biggest issue.
මාස් දාන්න නැත්තම් අපි මොකද මේකට කරන්න කියන තීන්දුවක් ගන්න ඕනේ. ඒක තමයි තියෙන ලොකුම ප්‍රශ්නේ.
The COVID-19 guidelines with regard to weddings and other functions were revised today given the prevailing COVID-19 situation in the country. Head of the National Operations Centre for the Prevention of COVID-19 Outbreak, Army Commander General Shavendra Silva listed out the new guidelines. Number 1. If a wedding hall has a seating capacity of more than 500 seats, a maximum of 150 people are allowed to attend the wedding. Number 2. For wedding halls with a seating capacity of less than 500, only a maximum of 100 people are allowed to attend the wedding. Number 3. A maximum of 25 people are allowed to attend a funeral at a time. Number 4. Heads of state institutions can decide on the number of people who are expected to report to work during this period. Number 5. All state festivities are postponed until the 1st of September. The spread of the COVID-19 Delta variant.
According to the Sri Jayawardenepura University, the rate of COVID-19 patients in Sri Lanka who are infected with the Delta variant of the virus has increased.
We use a certain technique to identify these variants. During the tests we conducted in July, we identified that 19.3% of patients in the Colombo district were infected with the Delta variant. This percentage has gradually increased. By the fourth week, it has increased to 75%. We have obtained samples for gene sequence testing from across the island. These test reports are being prepared. We hope to hand over this report to the Director General of Health tomorrow. Usually there are about 180 patients infected with the Delta variant in a group of 2,000 COVID-19 patients. We can clearly see that the percentage of COVID-19 patients infected with the Delta variant of the virus has increased. The over 1,000 patients identified with the Delta variant are now from patients whose samples on gene sequencing had been conducted. When we look at that number, one might think we should be content. But that is not the true situation. How does home-based management of low-risk COVID patients work?
Sri Lanka's Health Ministry has announced that the integrated home-based isolation and management of asymptomatic and mild symptomatic COVID-19 patients will be implemented across the island from next Monday. According to the guidelines issued by the Director General of Health Services, those eligible for home-based care should be between the ages of 2 and 65, should be isolated in a well-ventilated separate room with adequate washroom facilities, should not have uncontrolled comorbidities such as morbid obesity, diabetes, hypertension, chronic conditions, should not be suffering from immunocompromised status or not on long-term immunosuppressive therapy, should have adequate self-care or caregiver support at home, should have proper communication facilities and ability to communicate, and should have given informed consent. An assigned medical officer will conduct an initial assessment and daily monitoring of the patient. A call center will coordinate with the patient and the medical care team assigned for home care management. The medical care team will continue to monitor for symptoms using various parameters, and patients requiring hospitalization will be identified early and will be handed over to a specialist medical officer who will arrange transportation of the patient to the hospital.
If you are at home and you test positive for the virus, that is all you have to do. You must take bed rest. Do not exert yourself. If you can monitor oxygen, use it. What is important here is a pulse oximeter. If you have a pulse oximeter at home to monitor your oxygen, and if the readings is less than 96%, you must go to a hospital. It is important to consume about 2,500 milliliters of liquid to avoid dehydration. COVID-19 vaccination program.
Another 2 million doses of the Sinopharm vaccine was brought to the island today. People above the age of 60 were administered the first and second doses of the vaccine at the Vihara Mahadevi Park in Colombo today.
The Parliament Sergeant at Arms Narendra Fernando said 4 parliamentarians have contracted COVID-19. They are Minister Mahinda Nandaluthgamage, Janaka Tisakutiarachi, Rohana Disanayaka and Dilip Vedarachi. The Parliament Sergeant at Arms revealed Rohana Disanayaka had attended parliamentary sittings last Tuesday, while Dilip Vedarachi had been present in Parliament over the past 3 days. Narendra Fernando added investigations are underway to locate their close contacts. Meanwhile, Ranjan Ramanayaka, who is currently incarcerated, has also tested positive for COVID-19. Prison spokesperson Chandaneka Nayaka said Ramanayaka has been directed to the COVID-19 treatment centre situated at the Agunakola Palace prison. Posting a tweet, parliamentarian Harin Fernando said he is currently self-isolating as he had met Ranjan Ramanayaka at a relative's funeral earlier this week.
Meanwhile, opposition leader Sajith Premadasa said that the country is in danger due to the spread of the Delta variant.
The Delta variant of the COVID-19 virus is fast spreading in the country. The health system of the country is at risk because of the spread of the Delta variant. What is happening today? The lives of the people of this country are being lost due to the delays in bringing down the vaccine. For many months, they threw pots into rivers and brewed various tonics and used various media organizations to build public confidence in such mythological methods. During that time, if the government had procured the vaccines properly, the people of the country would not be facing this danger today. Right now, there is a serious shortage of beds. At some hospitals, patients are kept outdoors. There is a lack of equipment needed for ICUs. There is a shortage of facilities and medicine. There is a shortage of oxygen. What is the answer this government has to these issues? I make a request from the government to request the international community that as a very dangerous situation has arisen in our country, please help us to control the spread of this pandemic and immediately provide us with the vaccines required. We love this country. This is the opportunity to save the country. These short-sighted policies that are dragging the people of this country down to the grave must be stopped. Do not think that everything is all right and live in a dream. Although you are up on a cloud, the situation on the ground is very dangerous.
ඔබලා කැටි වලාකුළු වල කෙලි වලාකුළු වල හිටියා. මහ පොළොවේ යථාර්ථය මහා භයංකාරයි. මේවා මරණ රැලි නෙවෙයි. මේවා ඝාතන රැලි. කතා කරන්න ලෝක සෞඛ්‍ය සංවිධානය.
Speak to the World Health Organization and please don't tell us that you do not have money. If you can't do this, hand it over to us. We are an opposition that is ready and capable of giving the vaccines required by the people. The Samagi Jana Balavegya can conduct the vaccination program in the country more efficiently.
සමගි ජන බලවේගයට පුළුවන් මේ රටේ එන්නත් කරන ක්‍රියාවලිය මේට වැඩිය කාර්යක්ෂම ක්‍රියාත්මක කරන්න.
Issuing a media release, the Association of Medical Specialists urge and plead all organizations of teaching fraternity to temporarily suspend their protest campaign purely for the safety and health of our nation in the middle of this deadly pandemic. It adds the association has notified the government on the importance of imposing certain restrictions in the country at a time the Delta variant is spreading rapidly across the country. The statement further notes, large public gatherings in the form of demonstrations could also lead to the spread of the virus.
Vasantha Mudalige, the convener of the Inter-University Students Federation, and Amila Sandeepa, the chairman of the Sri Jayawardhanapura University Students Federation, who were arrested by the authorities, have been remanded until the 11th of this month. Now, the duo were remanded after they were produced before the Kaduvela magistrate Manjula Ratnayaka earlier today.
The convener of the Inter-University Students Federation, Vasantha Mudalige, was arrested at dawn today in Borupana, Ratmalana. He was arrested by a special team of police officers who had set up a roadblock while travelling on a three-wheeler.
මම වසන්ත මුදලිගේ මට හේතු දක්වන්න නැයි තමයි. ඔබතුමාගේ වරද තමයි. හරි. අයිති ජනතාවගේ සමාජය. කවුද තීරණය කරන්නේ? අපි අධිකරණ කර්මවාර්තා. හරි එහෙමද? ඔබතුමා මට මම කොහොමද වාහනේ ඉන්න කාලේ මෙහෙම කර්මවාර්තා කළාද? හරිද? එනිසා කරුණාකරලා මේක ගලවන්න. අධිකරණ කර්මවාර්තා කළා. ඔබතුමා මට උසාවි නියෝගයක් පෙන්නන්න අත්තරංගුවට ගන්න කර්මවාර්තා කළා දෙන්නේ. ඔබතුමා උසාවි නියෝගයක් පෙන්නන්න මාව අත්තරංගුවට ගන්න කොහේ උසාවියෙන්ද කියලා තියෙන්නේ? සංඝයේ වරදක්. කොහේ උසාවියෙන්ද කියලා තියෙන්නේ? කොහේ උසාවියෙන්ද කියලා තියෙන්නේ? කොහේ උසාවියෙන්ද කියලා තියෙන්නේ අත්තරංගුවට ගන්න කියලා? කොහේ උසාවියෙන්ද කියලා තියෙන්නේ? සංඝයේ වරද. මොකද්ද වරද කියන්නේ? උද්ඝෝෂණය කරපු එකද? උද්ඝෝෂණය කරපු එකද වරද? අධ්‍යාපන අයිතිය විකුණන්න එපා කියලා උද්ඝෝෂණය කරපු එකද වරද? ඒකද වරද? ඔබතුමාගේ ඉහළ නිලධාරියව මම කතා කරන්නේ. මට හේතුව දැනගන්න පුළුවන්ද? හේතුව තමයි ඔයා රාජ්‍ය දේපල වලට අනර්ථය කරා ඉදි කියලා විනාශ කරා. ඔබතුමා ළඟ උසාවි නියෝගයක් තියෙනවද? උසාවි නියෝගයක් තියෙනවා. අධිකරණ කර්ම වාර්තා කරලා තියෙනවා. ඔය එන්න අපිට කරදර කරන්න එපා. එන්න කරදර කරන්න එපා අපිට. මේ කරදර කරන්න එපා. පාරේ වාහනයක යනකොට කරදර කරන්න එපා අපිට. හරිද? මෙහෙන් පැහැරගෙන යන්නේ. පැහැරගෙන යන්නේ. අපි පැහැර ගැනීමක් කොහෙද තියෙන්නේ? පැහැර ගැනීමක් නැහැ. කිසිම පැහැර ගැනීමක් නැහැ. මොකක්ද පැහැර ගැනීම?
Meanwhile, Amila Sandeepa, the chairman of the Sri Javadanapura University Students' Federation, had also been arrested last night. The duo had been taken to the Talangama police station. The arrested student activists were produced before the Kaduwela magistrate, Manjula Ratnayaka, today. Thereafter, the magistrate ordered for the duo to be remanded until the 11th of this month.
Two
fingers of the OIC had been injured. That was not done intentionally. When two steel barricades clatter, if a hand or fingers are placed there, it is natural for an injury to occur. The other fact is setting fire to a cardboard box on the road. Those facts have been exaggerated and they claimed in court that it was destruction of public property. Those who claimed we breached quarantine regulations are the ones who breached them the most. The OIC who arrested Vasantha was not even wearing a mask. There are two separate laws being enacted in this country at present. One law applies to them and another for student leaders and entities opposing the Kotalavala National Defence University Bill.
3 drivers who were arrested along with the 2 student activists have been enlarged on bail. 3 more representatives of the Inter-University Students' Federation who were arrested on charges of protesting in a manner which harassed the public were produced before Colombo Chief Magistrate Buddhika Sri Ragala today by the Cinnamon Gardens Police. At that instance, the magistrate had advised the police sternly against making unlawful arrests and producing citizens to court. The magistrate pointed out that a person should be arrested only if he is found guilty of a charge against him and released the student activists on a personal bail of 100,000 rupees each. The magistrate pointed out in court that the people of the country have been given the right to freedom of speech and expression by the Constitution, not for the police to violate the law when required.
We saw the police officer carrying out the abduction, stating that this is not an abduction. However, it seems like one. You cannot say that it was not an abduction when the officer was in civil attire. The police officer was not wearing a mask. They are contradicting themselves when they say that we are violating quarantine regulations by protesting. They are violating them openly. Can these individuals silence the voice of the people?
At this moment, as you know, the people of this land know very well. At 3:30 a.m., the student union leader of the Inter-University Student Federation, Vasantha Mudulige, was arrested by this government. We hold the Ministry of Defense and all those people in the police responsible for the manner in which they arrested at 3:30 a.m. People who democratically express their views need to be respected by a democratic government. Why did you do that? When you are challenged by the peace-loving democratic citizenry of this country, you will only increase suppression and oppression. You have insulted Sri Lankan people and the Republic and undermined the will of the people by making this horrible, disastrous campaign against fundamental freedoms. You have attracted the attention of the international community. We have been undermined over and over again. The people are held responsible and the government is held responsible as a country that is not respecting democratic freedom. We are asking this government, especially at a time that the international community is focusing attention on fundamental freedoms of the country being violated by the Rajapaksa regime, not to undermine the dignity of the Sinhala, Tamil, Muslim and all communities of this country.
This is wrong. Protesting is a democratic right. Some people are taken away in white vans after taking part in teachers' principal protests. Our teachers were cuffed and taken away. What offence did they commit? Are they thieves? A new culture is being created in Sri Lanka at present where police officers are making arrests in civil attire. This is a great threat to the democracy of the country.
Meanwhile, in Parliament today, the opposition questioned as to how unarmed people were arrested by officers clad in civil attire.
Nalin Bandara Garu Mantrivaraya Ogeno Mama Yamkisi Kantavakata Adum Arangia.
MP Nalin Bandara keeps on saying that I gave clothes to a popular woman, and they continue to repeat the name of this woman simply to entertain themselves. This is an illness. I have never given this woman they are referring to any clothes. After those teachers were arrested, I permitted 2 attorneys to visit them that very same night. If Nalin Bandara wanted to go inside, he could have got permission from the Ports Authority and gone inside. If they wanted to hand over any items, they could have left them at the gate. There were 17 women but only 1 bag of goods. 1 bag was brought for one of his friends. I challenged Nalin Bandara to prove that I took clothes for that woman, or if a person associated with me took clothes to her. If he proves that, I will resign from my ministerial position tomorrow. If he cannot prove, he must stand at the entrance of the parliamentary chambers for 5 minutes carrying a lady's bag.
Who
you handed over clothes to is not a big issue. I would like to ask you as to why all these teachers who were arrested by various police stations were brought to the premises of the police at the port. Because when someone is arrested by officers attached to a certain police station, they are held at that same police station. They attempted to arrest Aminda Lakmal, who is a lecturer at the Sri Jayawardenepura University. These officers were not in office attire. They were simply wearing a t-shirt and had arrested these people after boarding a bus. Also, another student of the Sri Jayawardenepura University was arrested in a similar manner. They were dressed in civil attire and arrested these people and took them away in a white van. You are not acting like a legitimate government. You are acting like a renegade police force. When they were asked to show some sort of identification, they refused to show it. How can you create a culture like this?
මහජනාරක්ෂකපති හැටියට අපි කවදාකවත් පොලිසියට බලපෑම් කරන්නේ නැහැ. මේ ප්‍රශ්න තියෙනවා නම් කරුණාකරලා නිල වශයෙන් අහන්න මම ඒකට උත්තර දෙන්නම් අවශ්‍යයි. ඔබතුමාට මේක රිදුනද මන් දන්නේ නැහැ. නමුත්
I don't know if this hurt you, but you must decide and either treat teachers the same way you treat others or treat the teachers better. What power do you have to arrest these people from various police stations and then hold them in the custody of the Ports Authority police? He challenged me and asked me to resign from my seat. I will not say that I will resign, and I am not asking you to resign, because you are at least doing some good to a certain group. At the next parliamentary sitting, I will bring the voice recording of Fumi Hansamali, because she said that she contacted you and got her clothes brought to her.
From this morning, several issues that have been raised. The Minister for Public Security is unable to answer those questions. All I can say is ask that question officially. I mean, why do we meet here? And questions such as that of persons being abducted, I repeat, abducted by the police, not in uniform, is a very serious issue. It only shows a thorough breakdown of the law and order situation in this country. I don't know why we even have a minister called a public security minister. When senior lecturers, student leaders and others are abducted in broad daylight by police personnel in civis. Why do they have to come in civis? Why do they have to come in white vans? You are reminding the white van culture. You want to tell the country, remember, we did this earlier, we have brought it back. You want to instill fear in the people's mind. Somebody else will do this tomorrow. And we won't know whether it is the police or someone else.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, he mentioned my name in the sense as the Public Security Minister. Honorable Sumandiran is talking nonsense, a statement which has no meaning. I'm just telling you, right? No, that is because you mentioned my name. You mentioned my name, right? Okay. Yeah. No, you criticize me. You criticize me. So you criticize me. You criticize me, and that time
you have the brass to call my speech nonsense. Who are you? Absolute havoc you are wreaking in the country, and you are the brass neck to stand up here and try to answer me. Sit down, please. You speak when you have to speak. You don't answer when questions are raised. All you can say is raise it officially. I am talking about what you are doing today. How you have set the goons on the attack to arrest university academics, to arrest teachers, to arrest trade union leaders, not in uniform.
Meanwhile, protests were staged in multiple locations against the KNDU bill today as well. The United Centre against the KNDU bill staged a protest opposite the Fort Railway Station in Colombo today. We saw MPs and ministers of the ruling faction stating that a committee has been appointed to peruse the bill. That is not what a committee should be appointed for. It should be appointed to find out the drawbacks of this government. The people of this country have taken to the streets demanding the government to do their job and refrain from certain things. The government must bear the entire responsibility of bringing these people onto the streets amidst the surging COVID-19 pandemic. Another protest was staged against the KNDU bill in Hambantota today. The protesters marched from the Tissa junction to the Hambantota bus stand.
The protest march, launched by the National Coalition Against Teacher and Principal Salary Anomalies from Kandy, demanding a solution to the salary anomalies, entered its fourth day today. The march commenced from Galigamo today. Displaying his objection against the march, Namal Kumara climbed atop an electricity pole at the Ambepusa junction along the Colombo-Kandy main road. The march concluded for the day in Warakapula.
We are not political. Do not fall in trouble by disrupting us. We say to all the factions who are trying to influence our movement for the teachers and principals, we will not stop our struggle. Judge Tarangaraj Paksa of the No. 2 Athanagala Magistrates Court rejected the request made by Mirigama and Nittambu police to suspend the march, demanding a solution to the teacher principal salary anomalies for the second day today. The Mirigama police requested for an order to be issued to halt the protest march from the Halagala section of the Colombo-Kandy main road. The Nittambu police requested the court to issue an order restraining the protest march of the National Coalition Against Teacher Principal Salary Anomalies travelling from Pasyala to Colombo. The request made by the Mirigama and Nittambu police to suspend the march, demanding a solution to the teacher principal salary anomalies from the No. 2 Athanagala Magistrates Court, was rejected by the magistrate today. The Pudujana Education Service Union also convened a media briefing today.
There is a risk of a teachers' cluster emerging due to the non-adherence to COVID-19 regulations. This has been confirmed as it was a teacher from the Mavanal Educational Zone who had organized the protest that was staged on the 29th of last month. She has now informed the health authorities that she has tested positive for COVID-19 and the Mavanal Education Zone has confirmed this. So, if she has tested positive, just imagine how many people who came into contact with her would have gotten infected. Why are the health authorities silent on this matter?
positive වුණා නම් ඇය ආසිතව හිටපු අය මම හිතන්නේ කොයිතරම් මේ වෙනකොට ඔඩුදුවල යද්ද එතකොට සවුන් කියන්ස් ඇයි මේක නිහඬ වෙන්නේ
පහුගිය අවුරුදු
The attempts to destroy the country through various extremist groups and NGOs during the past 6 to 7 years is now re-emerging. We as the youth affiliated to the Sri Lanka Pudujana Peramuna must also shoulder part of the blame for this. We did not use social media to publicize what we did. I wonder if this situation was a result of that.
පොදුජන පෙරමුණ හා සම්බන්ධ තරුණ අපිත් බාරගත යුතුයි. අපි සමාජ මාධ්‍ය ජාල ඔස්සේ අපි කරන වැඩ කටයුතු ටික එළියට කතා කරන්න ගිහිල්ලා නැහැ. එහි ප්‍රතිඵලයක් දෝ කියලාත් හිතෙනවා. අද මේ පැත්තක ඉන්න නරි බල්ටි ගහන්න පටන් ගන්න තියෙන කාලය කියලා අපි මේ කියන්නේ.
ආණ්ඩුවට කවදාකවත්
The government has no intention of suppressing students, teachers, health professionals or any other democratic force in the country. If that was the case, we wouldn't have allowed the protest march from Kandy to proceed. But they are coming. They are taking the COVID-19 virus from village to village and door to door. One person climbed a tree and shouted, "We don't need COVID-19 in our village." That is why I reiterate that all of us have a social responsibility. This group is even led by a venerable Thera.
ඉතින් මේ කණ්ඩායමට නායකත්වය දෙන්නෙත් අපේ ගෞරවනීය ස්වාමීන් වහන්සේ නමක්. කියන්නා කෙසේ කිව්වත් අසන්නා සීබුද්ධියෙන් ඇසිය යුතුයි කියලා තමයි කියන්න තියෙන්නේ.
Protests were staged in a number of areas, including Anuradhapura, demanding for a solution to the salary anomalies of teachers and principals. A demonstration organized by the Parents Collective Organization in support of the Guru Savya in Gampaha was held at the Minuangoda town today. All identity cards of those who attended the protest were inspected by the police.
මට මෙතනින් එනකොටම කිසිදයක් වෙන ID එක ඇහුවා. දැන් දෙකන් ගිහලා මද ඇහුවේ? ඉන්න කිව්වා. සමහරවිට ඔයාලා ඉතින් මොනවා හරි මේ ඔයාලගේ කතාව හින්දා තමයි බේරුවේ. හරි.
Issuing a statement, Human Rights Watch said Sri Lanka's police are increasingly killing and abusing people under cover of the COVID-19 pandemic measures and an anti-drug campaign. The rights group has called on the government to restore independent oversight of the police and meaningfully investigate and prosecute alleged police abuses, noting, quote, "The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime and the United Kingdom's Police Scotland should suspend assistance programs until there is progress on accountability and reform." End quote. In conclusion, the statement has recommended international partners to suspend their engagement with abusive Sri Lankan law enforcement agencies until there is demonstrated political will to address the situation.
The COVID-19 pandemic has not only affected those living in Sri Lanka but across the globe. Now, what is happening with the other parts of the world? Let's take a look.
Australian officials warned Sydney residents today to brace for a surge in COVID-19 cases after the country's largest city lodged record infections for the second straight day despite a weeks-long lockdown to stamp out an outbreak of Delta variant. Sydney reported a record 279 locally acquired cases of COVID-19 over the past 24 hours, up from the previous high of 259 the day before. New South Wales reported a record 291 cases, up from 262. One more person has died, raising the state total to 22 during the latest outbreak, all in Sydney. India today recorded 44,643 new COVID-19 cases, higher than yesterday. The country also reported 464 deaths, taking the death count to 426,754. Kerala remains a major COVID hotspot with more than 20,000 daily cases. Indonesia's health ministry has recorded 1,747 new deaths of COVID-19 in the last 24 hours, pushing the nation's total death to 100,636. The Southeast Asian country has been struggling to cope with the highly contagious Delta variant since it was discovered in Indonesia in late June. According to reports, Indonesia's total number of infections has now reached 3.53 million. China reported today its highest daily count for new coronavirus cases in its current outbreak, fueled by a surge in locally transmitted infections, as Beijing grapples with a worsening outbreak of the Delta variant and
arms at the request of governments.
According to the data from UNICEF, the COVAX vaccine sharing program has so far delivered 186.2 million doses to 138 countries. COVAX aims to secure 2 billion doses for lower and middle income countries by the end of 2021. COVAX is run by the Global Alliance for Vaccines and Immunization, the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, the World Health Organization and the UNICEF. A UN spokesperson said the United Nations was ready to help countries with vaccine distribution, such as transportation, cold chain distribution and combating vaccine hesitancy.
Lionel Messi will leave Barcelona despite both parties having reached an agreement over a new contract, citing economic and structural obstacles to the renewal of the deal. It has almost been 1 year since a fresh government was established following the conclusion of last year's general election. However, how far have the people's aspirations been realized during this period? We leave it tonight with a number of views expressed regarding the matter in Parliament today, led by Vice Chairman of the Samagi Jana Balawege, MP Harin Fernando. And that's a wrap of this edition of Primetime News. For the Newsfirst team, I am Azra Hassan with our sign language interpreter for tonight, Taraka Gabriel. Take care and good night.
An individual with 7 brains was brought into the country. So, I would now like to ask, it has been 1 year. Were they able to reduce the price of petrol? Were salary anomalies of teachers and principals resolved? Were the bond scam culprits nabbed? Were the perpetrators of the April 21st attacks arrested? Was one country, one law enacted? Were foreign investors brought? No matter what date he was brought down, they could not ensure the health of the people. They could not create a single service like the 1990 service. They could not give out stents. They were not even able to provide a contact lens. Minister Veerasekara is present today. During the time I was in hospital, he had questioned why I mentioned the facts I know in Parliament instead of providing a statement to the CID. Yes, let us have a debate and you can rebut my points. All the facts I mentioned about the April 21st attacks were revealed at the Presidential Commission. Even in the face of a calamity, we are separated as the ruling faction and the opposition. Keeping the Parliament operational is also a grave tragedy. It is not as if everyone here is in optimal health. There are people with many health complications. They will only understand the gravity of this if they contract it.
ලෙඩේ හැදුනොත් ඔබතුමාලගේ පවුලටත් හැදුනොත් තමයි මේක වදින්නේ.
රැල්ලට බය නම් වැල්ලට එන්නේ නැහැ කියපු හරින් ෆර්නෑන්ඩෝ මෙතුමා මේ CID එකට ප්‍රශ්න කරන්න.
The person who claimed that he feared nothing got himself admitted to the hospital when the CID called him to provide a statement. I do not want to face off with such a person. Harin Fernando is connected to that probe. If you want a debate, do that with CID officials and not me. This is not a political matter.
නෙමෙයි CID officersලත් එක්ක සජීවී සංවාදයකට අරන් එන්න මම සූදානම්. සජීවී